Hi, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little bit, I've been busy, but I have a video today that I think is going to be really cool. I hope you think it's cool too. I had the opportunity back in December to basically take the whole month off. I went to Tennessee, I went to Florida, I went to Turks and Caicos, did a video on that, visited some gyms there, but I also got to go to Cuba, which was what an experience. And I got to visit a number of different gyms in Cuba. I went to Havana, and then I went across the country to a little town called Trinidad. Don't get that mixed up with the island. It's Trinidad, Cuba. It's a little town, 75,000 people, and I was able to visit a variety of different gyms. If you don't know a lot about Cuba, number one, it's a communist country, so there's a lot of poor people there. And everything is state-owned. You know, it's communism, so state-owned everything from restaurants, gyms, businesses. Well, recently, some of those regulations have laxed a little bit, so that now you do start to see some privately owned restaurants and gyms in Cuba. In 2010, in fact, there was this kind of boom on these private gyms in Cuba. People thought it would just be a flash of the pants and it would go away, but lo and behold, there's still private gyms in Cuba. There's also private restaurants in Cuba. So typically, what you'll see in Cuba, and you're going to see with some of these pictures, if it's a private gym, a lot of times it's just in another house, right? So how that would work is, hey, Cuba gives me a house, Cuba gave my buddy a house. They're both not very big, but hey, I move in with my buddy, so we can utilize this other space for a private gym where we can kind of have a side hustle. The problem is the buildings aren't super big, and you're going to see with some of these private gyms I visited, they're not real big. And then all the equipment is handmade in Cuba. They have to repurpose spare parts, whether it's parts from cars and old gears, and they have to weld things, and they have to make machines very similar to like you would purchase because of the embargo. They can't import, or they have a hard time importing a lot of different things. And it's not just the American embargo. There's other countries that as well, because of that embargo, won't allow them to bring stuff in. So you have to be very resourceful if you're a Cuban and you want to open your own gym. And so what you're going to see in these different gyms, you're going to see machines such as like a hack squat machine, leg press machine, a Smith machine. You're going to see all these different various machines that look similar to what you would see, for example, in the United States. But it's handmade in Cuba by Cubans with repurposed parts. It's absolutely amazing. There are some gyms that can be a little bit bigger, that aren't a house, where Cubans can negotiate with the government a price on something. But for the most part, when you go to a private gym, at least in my experience in Cuba, it's going to be in a spot that's unmarked. And that is basically in with a bunch of houses. And so you'll see that. I was lucky. Most Cubans, or a lot of Cubans, don't speak English. So there's definitely a language barrier. I would say this: most Cubans speak English about how I speak Spanish, which is maybe a teeny bit, but not great. And a lot of these private gyms, there is no signage. You wouldn't even know they were there. So there's houses. Check out the pictures. You'll see just houses. All of a sudden, one of these houses with zero signage, you walk in, is a gym, right? And so I wouldn't have even been able to find these things if I didn't have a little bit of help. And I ran into a gal and her husband, very sweet people, that spoke enough English to help me navigate this. And so what happened when I went to Trinidad is I went to 3 private gyms and 1 state-sponsored gym. The state-sponsored gym, much bigger, but again, all the equipment handmade. made in Cuba, with the exception of I did see some old Russian bars, and you're going to see that. You know, the Russian bars where the collars screw on. And it makes sense that you see a few things from Russia because they're allies, right? And so that's about the only thing that I saw that was probably not handmade there. Incredible video. It was an incredible experience. And if you haven't had a chance to see my Turks and Caicos video of some of the gyms there, I'll link that in the description. But I really strongly recommend, if you're big into gyms and into barbells and into equipment, which is really my passion and my hobby, when you go on vacation, especially in some of these third world countries or some of these countries that maybe you wouldn't normally think it's a time to go find a gym, that's the best time because of what you'll see. One thing I'll mention as I show you some of the videos in these gyms is, you know, I was very mindful that I was a visitor. And so I didn't just want to come in the gyms and start filming everybody. A lot of people, you know, gym is a very personal place where you're trying to work out. You're maybe not comfortable with you know, people watching you and furthermore videoing you and then throwing you onto YouTube for the whole world to see. So I made sure to ask through my translator that I had with me if it was okay that I could film. It was very interesting. Not a single person had hesitancy to being filmed. Very different. If you were to go in the States and you go into a 24-hour fitness and just start filming people, you know what would happen. You'd have some pretty upset people. In fact, we see some of that in some of these gyms, and we see some people that are upset. But nobody was upset. People welcomed the filming. And so when I went into these gyms, you're going to see that I film people working out. And on certain different equipment, they were so friendly. Again, there was a language barrier. In fact, of all the people I spoke to in the gyms, none of them spoke English. So it was odd. But there were folks, and you're going to see on some of these videos that were lifting. And I would come in and say, hey, can I jump in? And can I film it? And can I film you doing it? And it was really fun. The barbells were insane. Very small, that obviously no knurling. The only way you're going to find any knurling on any of the bars would be if they were old Russian bars, which there were a few, but the knurling was still very passive. But we're talking these bars were just pipes that were in millimeter size, very little. So like 18 millimeter pipes where you're throwing it up, benching. And then the weights were just whatever. You know, some were in kilograms and it was written on there. Some were just parts and pieces. But what an experience. So great experience. I hope you enjoy it. Show you some of the videos, some of the pictures. And here we go. Okay, so the first gym I went to was a private gym called Gym Evolution. They had their own cards. That was about the only advertisement they did. You can see you'd never find this place. Just in what looks to me like an old house, and just right in the middle of a residential area. No signage. Kind of a cool little walk-in here. This was really when I realized how cool visiting these gyms are going to be. This is a Smith machine. Homemade, made in Cuba. Look at this thing. Just all iron Smith machine. I actually did use it. Works well. It's pretty smooth. It just blew me away. You could see everything here. Like I said, it's just handmade. Look at that. There's different pieces. The bars are basically axle bars. Like I mentioned, you know, that you're not going to find knurling on them. There's a cool old Cuban weight plate. I mean, just the actual weights. Just whatever they can find. Some were real weight plates. Some were old cranks and parts. You can tell where they've upholstered different pieces of metal to use as seats. These are all attachments for the cable machines, you know, where they just heat up the iron, the steel, and bend it. All different attachments. There's a cable machine. Lots of different cable machines, and there's just a mix mash of different weights and loadable dumbbells and different things. I mean, the actual loadable dumbbells, if you look closely here at the end of those, it's kind of got the Russian bar grooves there, so you can screw on the collars. Again, that's the making of it, the mark of being a Russian bar. There's just a weight plate holder. Homemade pull-up bar. You can tell they've pulled the carpet out from whatever this place was. There's a little bench station that I actually, here in a second, I used. Had no idea how much weight was on that bar. And I really didn't realize until I got on there how narrow these barbells, a lot of these barbells are. These two fellas, I did ask before I went in there if I could film them. They said great. And I mentioned before, everybody was just so friendly. You know, there's just two Cubans living their life, trying to stay fit, doing hip thrusters with homemade bar there. You know, and obviously they're using a little shorter bar. And then there's a little area out back that didn't have much out there, but there was a little backyard. Like I said, I think this used to be a house. I can't be for sure what this was, but it's not very big, as you can tell. To be a member of this gym was about $1 a month, so it's not very expensive. So here I am benching. Again, I had no idea how much weight was on here. There wasn't a lot on here. It was, I don't know, 140 maybe. I don't know. But the scary part of this is these bench stations, a lot of these stations are not adjustable. I have alligator arms. I have short arms, so to get them back up there was a little scary. Now this machine was cool because this is a combo machine to me. This looks like a leg press machine and like a hack squat type machine. So you can see the pads are just put on there if you want to use it as a squat machine. Yeah, very cool machine. I did not use that machine. I didn't. It just didn't look very inviting. I didn't want to figure out what to do on that. But look at those wheels as weights. Essentially, those are just wagon wheels. Again, you'll see a lot of gears and those kind of things. That's out back. Some spare parts. Not a ton to see back there, but overall, for $1 a month, you know, it's ultimately, as much as I love having really nice equipment, it's not really that's going to make you strong. It's actually getting in there and doing something. Just like you saw those two Cuban kids, they were strong. Look at this landmine, homemade landmine, like something that I've never seen before. With just a bar. All right, so we made our way to our next private gym. This private gym, a little bit nicer, and a little bit more expensive than the first one, called Energy Gym. Still, there's no way we would have found it, as you can see here. It's just right in the middle of all the houses. This gym was still incredibly cheap, under a couple bucks a month, but more expensive than the first one. You can see with the cool walk-in, I don't know what this building was. It had a house feel to it because of all the different rooms, but it was definitely a little bit bigger than the first one. It also had a little bit nicer equipment. You could see the dumbbells there. It had a little boxing room. It has a cardio room. It had a sauna. Now look at this treadmill. You do not see very many treadmills in Cuba because of the electronics. This one, it was there, but it was broken down. But they still tried to use it. Here's the cool thing: these Russian bars. A bunch of these different Russian bars. You see the knurling. This is an old bar, and these are old, original Russian bars from Russia. You can see the collars there in the background where you screw them on. I was really excited about this, to be able to see these. Were very cool. Again, even though this was a little bit nicer, actually had bumper plates, you can tell the quality. These things are old, they're cracked, they don't have the weight on them. And then the machines, like this leg press machine, this is handmade. Same with that squat machine, handmade from parts, welded by Cubans to get the job done. And then the padding put on, the upholstery guy. So like I said, this one's a little bit bigger. Again, there's a Russian bar, an actual real barbell. I was really excited about seeing this because Rogue used to sell a Russian bar on its website. I just looked. Looks like you can only get it right now anyway from the Europe Rogue site, but pretty neat to see one of these. I used it. It was cool, and it's definitely, look at the thickness of that Russian bar. Just very different. It felt good though to use. It was cool, but again, the weights, kind of just a mix mash of weights. Hard to really know how many pounds you were putting on there. You just had to try to get it even on both sides. And again, there's some cable machines that are homemade. You can see they tried to paint everything kind of in a certain style with that orange, kind of make everything uniform. There's a pec deck machine. All those machines work too. They were all plate loaded. Obviously you didn't see any weight stacks, but the pulleys seemed to work. Everything seemed to work. This is a Smith machine. There was a couple Smith machines there. You'll see here in a minute, I actually used that Smith machine, and it was super smooth. I typically wouldn't squat in a Smith machine at home. That's not what I use a Smith machine for. It's something I probably don't recommend doing, even though I think Smith machines get a bad rap. I mean, Brian Shaw has a Smith machine in his home gym. So if Brian Shaw has one, I think they're worth it. But you'll see that I do squat in it. Now here is an adjustable bench. You can tell this is I don't know if I would trust this with a lot of weight. That ladder system, it's similar to what you would buy from Rep, I guess, but definitely not as heavy duty. But again, when you're dealing with all things that have to be made by hand, that's what you get. And the Cubans there find a way to get it done. This gym actually had a sauna. You can see the little bathroom there. It's a little sauna. Lots of homemade equipment. The weight plates at this gym were a little bit nicer, but they didn't say how much weight they were, which to me would make it hard to train, but I guess you figure it out. You also see at this gym, that's kind of like an elliptical machine and kind of like a stair stepper in one. I did try it. It does work, but it's very, very different. There's some leg extension machines and reverse leg curl machines. Not super comfortable. The adjustability is not the same as you'd find in the United States, but anyway, there's the cardio room. And here's me trying out that homemade Smith machine. That was kind of a fun experience. lat pull down machine. Kind of the issue with some of these machines is they're one size fits some. So you can see he's almost too tall for that, where he doesn't get the full range of motion at the top. I didn't have that issue, but it was kind of a weird fit getting my legs in there. But it got the job done. You can get a good back workout doing that. So that's it for that private gym. On to the next. Went to some other gyms. That's a boxing gym. I'm not going to show a lot of that because it has nothing to do with weightlifting, but it was fun to see these different facilities. But we headed on to the actual state-sponsored gym, which was by far the biggest gym that we visited. You can see the outside. This is free to all folks that live in Trinidad. You can see some mobility stuff outside, kind of like you'd see in a park. You see some of that in the States and parks and those kind of things, but old scale. This fellow was really interesting guy. He didn't speak English, but this was the head trainer of the facility. You can tell he took his job very seriously. He was extremely nice and let us look around, let us video. Really, really neat to meet that man. And he was an older guy, but that guy was cut up. Here's some equipment. You do notice you'll see some weight stacks here. The only gym that I visited in Cuba that you actually see some weight stacks. The benches were awful. They were so slick. And that floor in this gym, I don't know if you can, I think you can tell. The floor was just awful. The floor was slick. Weights had, you can see some gears there, but the weights had numbers on them. Another Russian bar. So the actual weight plates were a little bit nicer. Some of the Russian bars that they had, like that one, didn't have any knurling, and they were so narrow. And then the other thing, there's a little, that bar's kind of cool. It's like like a little safety squat bar, but not. But the other thing, and you'll see when I bench here in a minute, those J-cups, they're so narrow. And that 90-degree leg press was a trip. Never seen one like that. I don't know if you guys have. If you have, put it in the comments. But, to be angled at 90 degrees like that just was awkward. And you'll see the guy using it. You can see here, no collars. Unless it was a Russian bar, there's no collars. So the plates are just they're gonna be loose. And there's that 90-degree leg press. I did not try that machine. It just looked, maybe it's easier to build it that way, but it just seemed like that positioning is not optimal. But I don't know. Interesting. Here I am benching. I hopped on there without a warm-up. He said it was 190 pounds, and I just had so much adrenaline because I was just excited to be there. So I was throwing it up just like I was warmed up, just because I was excited. But you see the J-cups. The J-cups are so much narrower where you rack it that it was just awkward when I put it back on. It felt like if I missed, it was going to slam into my face. There I am. And again, Mr. Alligator Arms, that's me. No adjustability. Saw the old bike there. What an experience. It was really fun to go to this one because it was a little bit bigger. It was really hot in there, and the floor was terrible, but enjoyable. But look, this squat rack here, I did use, that you're seeing this guy use. The floor was just so slick and uneven. It was like the most terrible spot to do squats. He actually uses a little wedge here, and I don't know if he's doing that to actually use it like a wedge or just because it's so slick he wants to get a little more grip. I didn't use that little wedge, but anyway, that's the state-sponsored gym. What a trip. I hope you enjoyed some of the footage. Well, what an experience being able to go and check out some of these different private gyms and that one state-sponsored gym in Cuba. I hope you enjoyed it. It was one of the best things that I've ever got to do, and I want to go back and I want to do more of that type of content. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Until next time, adios.